Hi, I'm Beth Walter, Board Chair of the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. Several years ago, I lost my husband to one of the frontotemporal diseases. As a way to give meaning to this gut-wrenching experience, I became passionate about raising awareness and finding a cure. Frontotemporal degeneration refers to a group of progressive brain diseases that attack and ultimately destroy a person's ability to talk, think, walk, make decisions, and show emotion, the very qualities that make us who we are. There are no treatments and no cures for these devastating diseases. Symptoms start gradually and are often confused with other illnesses. Few people understand the impact FTD has on patients and families. But there are many reasons for hope. Research is expanding rapidly. Scientists are learning more all the time. They are identifying targets for drug treatments, and the first medications are now entering clinical trials. The key to continuing this progress is awareness. For too long, families have had to describe the impact of FTD all on their own. This film signals a change. We want people facing these diseases to know they are no longer alone. It Is What It Is weaves together the stories of 4 families affected by FTD. Each journey is unique, but the experiences described here are common to many who grapple with these diseases. These stories are heart-wrenching, and they compel us to action. The future holds great promise for better understanding and remarkable scientific breakthroughs. But it all starts with the courage and devotion of those who know these diseases firsthand. It is only by seeing the faces and hearing the stories of FTD that you will appreciate how much needs to be done. I'm urging you to learn more about frontotemporal degeneration, get involved, and support AFTD so that together we can change the future.
We like to go running together. And so he was riding his bike, and I was running next to him. I will always remember the picture of his shadow that I could see ahead of me on the pavement. Because I thought, God, that's exactly what it's like. I have the shadow of this person who's still with me and walking around with me.
Bruce Kuhn. Known him since I was 14 and he was 16. He was a farm boy, and I was best friends with his sister. And this is no lie, the second I saw him, I said, that's the man I'm going to marry.
Chris was a professor at UT Computer Science Department for 24 years.
I mean, the only thing I truly remember is her just walking around the house and just laying in bed. Because I don't really know what it's really like to have a mom in the house.
That's what my kids keep saying to me. Why did you get your silly brain, Daddy? Why?
My father came to visit us at Christmas of 2002, and as he was leaving, he said, I think something's not right.
I knew that he was emotionally withdrawing from me. And what did it was the fact that he had been promoted for a job that was then taken away from him. I looked at him and I said, something is wrong with you. Because at that point, I had his job, I had his parents in town, who on the second day his mother turned to me and said, who is that man in this house?
And then when I started to find out through the accountant of his business that there were serious issues, and he just kept saying, no, everything's fine. I just have to go and collect this check, and everything will be fine. And every day he said, I just have to go and get the check. And it just never existed.
Finally, Alex had come to me and said, I can't remember the last time Mom said she loved me or gave me a hug and a kiss. When I went to Michelle and told her that, she said, well, I'll get to it.
In 2006, I was going to tell my husband a story, and there was some part of the story was a life jacket, but all of a sudden I could not say the word life jacket. And then I tried to describe it, but I couldn't describe it at all. And so Christopher and I both looked at each other and said, "What is going on?"
And then what happened is there was socially inappropriate behaviors with friends of mine, girlfriends. So the anger built up. And an anger that was so deep-seated, I could barely even look at him.
I said, I am not starting 2006. I'm not doing this again. We cannot do this again. I said, you go to a doctor or I'm filing for divorce.
Being with a friend who is a physician, and he said, Michelle, I told my wife that if I was acting like Jeff, she needed to get me on a plane and take me to a medical academic center.
I just knew it wasn't him. And I knew that something was wrong when he started getting these body tremors. I would say to him, do you know when one of those is coming? And he said, yeah, it feels like an electric shock in my head.
And so she sent me to a very well-known neurologist, and she said, you don't have a memory problem, you have a language problem.
So I remember calling my father-in-law from the car saying, you know, we know what's going on. She's depressed, so we can fix this.
So we went to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist, yep, it's definitely anxiety. I think it's a little bit more pronounced. We're gonna put him on medication, and his obsessive compulsive behaviors just exploded after that.
The tipping point was the way she was treating the kids. Michelle took him to a movie theater. The movie started and she just left. I said to Michelle, what were you thinking? And she said, I didn't like the movie.
He would literally walk 8 hours a day in our neighborhood, just in circles. Little by little, he would bring things back home, a kid's bike that he saw laying in a yard, and I'd have to go take it back to wherever he got it. And then it got to the point where one day he pulled up in the driveway with another person's vehicle. And I said, where did you get that car? He said, I don't know.
So after that, we had an MRI done. And, you know, the technician was looking for masses for, you know, cancer or a tumor. So they read the MRI and they said, hey, everything's fine with Mrs. Brown.
And I thought it was a tumor. I'd give anything for it to be a tumor. I'd give anything for it to be something that they could go in and cut out. I could never imagine that he would be losing his brain.
It was May 28th of 2008. The doctor has to see me first by myself. And just by the look on his face, I knew it wasn't going to be good news.
The doctor said, this is the issue. It's frontal lobar degeneration, known as FTD. It's probably, 7 to 10 years. And I said, what do you mean 7 to 10 years? And she said, well, that's the length of the disease. And I said, then what happens? She said, well, she'll pass away.
I remember it was like time stood still. And I think I said, no, that's not possible. That's not an option. And he said, we can treat the symptoms. We can make it easy on you.
Michelle was there with me, and Michelle said, let's go to Costco. We got to go shopping at Costco.
I still had hope that there were plenty of good days left ahead for us. But then the next thought that crossed my mind was, this is the best day that there's going to be with him.
My neighbor once described me as scorched earth, which felt very right. The fire has come through and everything is black and ashen, and the life that I was going to live has died and is gone, and there are green buds of new life coming up everywhere.
I usually drive down on Sunday mornings, right before lunchtime, and get there, and sometimes she's laying in bed, and, usually rub her back, and then get her up and go walking outside in the courtyard or go to the TV viewing room.
We're in the peculiar situation of both having brain diseases. Chris has an FTD disease, primary progressive aphasia, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in March of this year. And so we're in this hysterical position of being patient and caregiver. She for me for her.
The boys who are just 5. They have been really interested in reading that body book. One time in particular, Josh wanted to know where on this picture was Daddy's silly brain. Where on the brain was Daddy's silly brain? And so I pointed, to the frontal lobe part of the brain, and the black squiggly lines. I said, Daddy's brain has bigger lines than this. That's what makes Daddy's brain silly. And Nick said, what does that mean? Why are his thicker? And I said, because it's space. Because Daddy's brain is going away. And Josh sat up straight in the bed. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, if your brain goes away, you die. And he started sobbing. And I'm scratching his back. And I said, it's going to be okay, Josh. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And Nick pointed his finger like this in my periphery. I could see it. And so I turned and I looked at Nick and he said, are you gonna die? They bring up death way more than any preschooler should. And I don't know how to undo that.
My older son graduated from high school last year, and she should have been there for that. She didn't go to his high school graduation. She wasn't able to go. She was in a facility. And I remember he said to me, Dad, can I borrow your camera? He said, I want to go to Mom's facility, and I want to take a picture of her with me in my cap and gown.
Now I have a mixture of guilt and just real sadness. All that time I spent yelling at him and being angry for things that were beyond his control, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to him.
I remember talking to another family, believe it or not, in this neighborhood, whose husband has this, and they said, he has frontotemporal dementia. And I just remember like the hair on my neck standing up going, oh my God, somebody else has this horrible disease. And then becoming involved with AFTD and the caregiver groups and people around the country. It's like, we all are part of this shitty club, and we're trying to make the most of it.
What we've come to realize is most people with brain diseases rarely get diagnosed on a timely basis. Well, we thought he was stressed. We thought he was tired. We thought it was old age. We thought he couldn't hear as well. We thought he couldn't see as well. Yada, 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 we thought. And then you find out that in all the time that you thought that, the precious time of life, or what remained of your precious life, slipped away like water through your fingers. And boy, would we like to play a role in changing that.
I think it's the real gift of his parents moving, leaving their home of 39 years and moving to our street. They have opened their doors to Jeff so that increasingly there are dinners that he has with just them. Increasingly there are nights that he spends the night over at their house, and to slowly prepare for his departure. To begin, I collapse our kitchen table so it's just the 3 kids and me, and we can have those meals together right now. And the reason that I'm doing this, the reason that I'm torturing myself to sort of live into this future without Jeff on a daily basis, is because I need to be ready to be there for them when it's their turn.
It's been a year since my older son has seen his mother, and the younger 2 haven't seen her in about 6 months. But we do know that she was a good person, she was a good mother, she was a good wife. This disease stole it all. Stole it from her, stole it from this family, and we're just struggling to get through it.
I had the diagnosis of primary progressive aphasia, but I didn't, know what to do with it. And I was so excited that they had a brain donation, because when I died, then they would see if they could learn from my brain.
Bruce and I had actually been divorced, and I started thinking maybe that was the beginning of the disease, which would have been about 12 years ago. Bruce grabbed my hand and looked at me, and he said, "Would you marry me again?" I said, "Well, why would you want to do a full thing like that for?" He said, "Because I think there's something wrong with me." And I said, "Well, yeah, let's do it then. We've been talking about it forever." So I got his diagnosis on May 28th, and we remarried May 31st.
Jeff doesn't say I love you anymore. He doesn't tell me how he feels. He can't articulate that anymore. He just looks at me and he says, "I'm so glad we're doing this life together." That's what he says over and over. "I'm so glad we're doing this life together." I told him when we were in Vermont, he and I went running, and we stopped at a precipice called Heaven's Bench. We were walking hand in hand, and I said to him, if I knew then everything that I know now of what was going to happen to us, I still would have said yes. And he stopped, and he doesn't show emotion anymore, and he just started sobbing. And we stood and we cried. And then he said, "I'm so glad I'm doing this life with you." Because it's true. I wouldn't trade any minute of it. That's it.
I don't know what to say. I could want the life to be better, but it is what it is. That's a good saying. It is what it is.